Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 111. Hi, I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
The Becoming Ellie community is for the women over 50 who are interested in being fit, strong, and healthy.
We named our group Becoming Ellie because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. We thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie.
You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and sign up for our newsletter at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
Yes, if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll know when a new podcast episode is released and when a blog post is published.
So today's guest is a bit of a shift in focus for us.
Yes, Renée Suzanne is a coach who specializes in love, but we learned a lot about motivation and how to achieve goals with her.
Yes, I think there's actually an awful lot that we can learn from Renée Suzanne, and I know our listeners are going to enjoy hearing what she has to say. Let's go to the podcast. Our podcast is called Fit Strong Women Over 50 and generally focuses on healthy eating, exercise, motivation, and of course, inspiration.
We all know that so much of this is a mental game. Because of that, today we are talking with Renée Suzanne, who is a special kind of coach. She helps women with self-awareness and self-confidence, persistence, positive mental attitude, self-love, and acceptance.
Renée Suzanne helps women over 40 start dating better men immediately so they can meet and marry the man of their dreams. She's the creator of the courted method, a process that helps women date in order to create the lasting connection they really want.
Renée is the author of Beloved, How to Go from Relationship Challenged to Relationship Ready, and 10 Things You Can Do to Upgrade Your Love Life. When she's not helping women find true love, she is out ballroom dancing with her husband or walking her dog on the trails near her home in Chicagoland.
Welcome, Renée. It's great to have you join us. And you're specializing in helping single women find love. Is that right?
Yes.
How did you end up becoming a love coach?
Well, I ended up doing it because I had my own very tumultuous love journey back in the late 90s. I was a very overwhelmed single mom of 4 kids. Their father had passed away. And when the dust settled and I thought it might be time to put myself back out there, it was kind of different. Online dating was just becoming a thing, sort of, but it was scary and weird. And then I had the kids and the job and the dog and the house and the commute. And it was just not what I expected or wanted at all. And I intermittently gave up and then started again and didn't really get much traction. And I spent so many Saturday nights looking around the bookstores. Remember when Borders was a thing? Borders and Barnes and Noble, and they had real books and you would go and read them in the store.
Yes, they even had little coffee shops.
Right. So I would go to Borders on Saturday night and get these big stacks of self-help books and pour over them trying to find a solution to dating. I was really motivated to figure this out. And then when the kids grew up, I was an empty nester and still single and still trying to figure this out in my little it girl apartment in the city. Then dating got even to be more of a project because I didn't have so much else to do. I made a great group of friends and did lots of fun things and I took up running. I ran half marathons and a marathon, and I was always at the gym and all of that. And I thought, I look good for my age. I have a good job. I don't have little kids anymore. Like, what is happening? And I just learned everything I could about dating until I was finally able to figure out how to do this for myself. And when I did, I married my wonderful husband, who I met on Tinder when I was 49, which was 5 years ago now. And I thought it just didn't have to be that hard. Now looking back and knowing if there was a PhD in dating, I would have one because I learned so much.
Well, our podcast is for women over 50 who are interested in being fit and strong. And some of us are single, some of us are married. Personally, I've been married for 42 years, so I'm not interested in the dating part. But, many of our listeners probably don't want to find a date either, but still want to be their best and have a meaningful relationship. So does your advice cross over for all women?
I think that my advice applies to anyone who wants anything in life at all.
Great.
Because I think that our desires, whether they be for love, a healthy, fit body, a wonderful experience in the second half of life, just anything. I think our desires are like little homework assignments from the universe. The universe is like, hey, do you want this thing? Let's go do it. And in the doing it, in the stretching for the goal, any goal, you become the next version of yourself who has that thing. And it could be anything at all. And I help women with love and dating, but all of it applies.
That's great.
So your book, and I know you're the author of a couple of books, but the blurb for Beloved, How to Go from Relationship Challenged to Relationship Ready, which I love that title, but the blurb for it caught my eye. It said, this book is a guide to becoming the best possible version of yourself, recognizing your value and taking responsibility for your life. Read it and blossom into the irresistible woman you were born to be. That does apply to much about life besides dating. But can you give us a rundown on how you suggest women become the best possible version of themselves?
Sure. I think the key to all of that is owning our desires, whatever we want in life, a relationship, to have a healthy, strong, fit body, to live in a beautiful home, to go for a promotion at work, whatever, that's the next version of ourselves, or the universe, or whatever, calling us to become something that we haven't figured out how to do yet. And a lot of times, especially I find in love, we think, oh, this thing hasn't happened. I'm over 40. I'm over 50. I guess, this thing hasn't happened. I've always loved sweets. I've always dated the wrong men. I've always been a couch potato, whatever. And we kind of think maybe the thing's just not meant to be for us. Maybe we're older now and that's for younger people. Or maybe we just, for whatever reason, that thing isn't meant to be for us. It's for other people. But I believe if you have a desire for something, that it is meant to be for you. And you can embrace that desire. First, you have to be honest with yourself about what that desire is and be okay with wanting it. And then you can go about becoming the version of yourself that has the thing that you desire, instead of what a lot of people do is like, oh, that's not for me. I can't have it. It's not meant to be. It's for other people. It's my mom's fault that I don't have that thing. Or if, the guy that I used to love in college hadn't gone and married someone else and took my dog or whatever, if we move forward into, hey, maybe I can have this thing. Maybe I could figure it out. Let's see if we can do this. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could run that marathon or find the love of my life or start a business? What if I could?
All right. So whether it's, I want to find the man of my dreams, but we'll just stick with that since that's your business, but we understand it could be anything. All right. So I've articulated that. I want to find someone and I want them to, whatever. I want this particular partner, type of person.
Type
or
of
whatever.
person. Yeah. It can't be about
Yes. All right. Yes. But type of person. What do I do next after I've articulated that? What do I do?
Right. So you articulate, hey, I would really like to share my life with someone. I want to find the love of my life. And from that place, you're real about it. Like, that's a big step right there, is to admit that you want something. So many people are kind of sheepish about wanting to find the love of their life later, especially later on. They think, oh, marriage is for young people. I was in my 40s. I had a wedding dress that I had bought when I was a stressed out single mom in my 30s. I used to fantasize about, I never had the big wedding. I got a little courthouse wedding when I was a teenager. And I wanted these beautiful, I was working in corporate, and I was this single mom in my 30s. And that's when like normal people get married. And I would get invited to my coworkers' weddings, and I would think, oh, but I'm too old. I've already got 4 kids. I can't have a big sparkly wedding. And my daughter worked in this bridal shop.
Oh boy.
And
that would even be harder.
I know. And I would pass by the bridal shop on the way home from work. And sometimes I'd pop in and visit her. And I was like Cinderella in there, right? I was like, oh, they're so beautiful, all these wedding gowns. And I'm, 35 and I can't have the big wedding, but I had never even touched or worn a wedding gown ever. So I would pop in the bridal shop and I would prance around the bridal shop in these wedding gowns. And it was so much fun. This was my little escapism before I went home to the kids and the dog and trying to get dinner on the table and all of that. And one day I put on this wedding dress and it was the one. So like hadn't had a date in years, just like this single mom. I bought the thing. I plunked down my credit card and I bought this wedding gown, the age of 35, like 15 years later, I wore it. 15 years later, I wore it to marry my husband, and I had the wedding cake and I had all the things, and people actually came to my wedding. Nobody laughed at me, at least not to my face. I was able to do that because I thought, you know what? I don't care. I want this thing. I want the big, You
don't care what other people think, but you care very deeply about having the wedding of your dreams, right?
Yes. But I was very sheepish about it at first. Like, who am I to want? I already have these kids. I already was married once. I'm older and not getting any younger by any means. Who am I to have this wedding? Will people even come?
Everything that you're saying, I could relate that to races that I've done. Like, what if I come in last and I'm sort of a walker runner, more walker than runner? Or are they going to laugh at me because I'm so old? And, all the young kids are going to, like the same feelings, but different.
Yeah. And I feel like even admitting that you want something is a very big first step. And then when you do it, when you actually do that thing, because I was thinking, well, I'd be cheering for you. And it gives other women who want the same thing, maybe a little bit of, I don't like the word permission because I don't think we really need it, but kind of like there's somebody who's like me. There's someone who is like me, who is doing that thing that I want to do. Maybe I can too. Maybe it's not so weird. Maybe if this other person could do it, it's possible.
Yeah. Why not me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just part of the human psyche is to want to, you want to be part of a group. You want to be this, you don't want to be completely out there all by yourself. So you may want to do something that's unique to you or different than what the majority of people are doing, but it's still helpful to know you're not the absolute only person in the world trying to do something.
Yes.
If you want to find a life partner or you want to run a race, it's still helpful. And no one around you is doing it. Or if you want to change your diet and become a healthier you, sometimes there's no one around you doing that. Right. And finding others who are doing it really does make life, it makes it easier. You're more comfortable that what you're doing is an okay thing to do.
So I'm taking notes here, and I wrote down, articulate the desired goal. It's a big step to admit you want something. And then the next thing I wrote down, because I was listening, I guess, I wrote, do it. I'd be cheering for you. Permission is not something that you like. Someone like me who is doing something I want, maybe I could do it too. So I feel like I missed a step in there between articulating it and doing it.
Right. The next step, I built a whole process that I take my clients through. The next step is own it.
Own it.
Once you articulate this desire, then you commit to achieving it. You make that commitment to yourself, and that's what you have said that you want. And then the things that you do will line up with that desire. So for instance, if you have articulated that you want the love of your life, then what were you doing before that was kind of in the way of that? Maybe you were not putting yourself out there. Maybe you were just going on girls' trips or hanging out with your dog and your grandkids. So maybe you set aside some time to go on dates instead of doing those other things all the time, like working late or whatever else. You take actions that are consistent with what you say you want in life.
Got it. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about self-acceptance. I know that something many of us struggle with is that little voice inside my head, our head, or each of ours head, telling us that we're not good enough or strong enough or thin enough. And as a coach, do you work with clients to help change that little voice? And how do we do that? How do we quit listening to that voice?
Yeah, that's a great question. We all have that voice, and that voice just wants to keep us safe and to keep us from risking anything that might be painful. So, it can be daunting to put yourself out there to date and possibly get rejected or have your feelings hurt or have other people say, what is she doing going out on dates when she should be with her grandchildren or her dog or her whatever, and people might, what will people think? What will you think to do these things? Everybody's got that voice, which is often meaner than anyone else.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just encourage people to listen to that voice. That voice is really trying to help you and keep you safe. So we can listen to that voice and we can say, okay, what do you have to say? What's the deal here? I thank you so much for trying to keep me safe. Mean-ish voice in my head. Is there really something dangerous that could happen? What is the worst that could happen if I went on Tinder or Match.com? And then you can have a plan like, oh, the worst that could happen is maybe there will be some online scammer or something like, okay, well, yes, that kind of thing does happen. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to only talk to people who are local, and we will take our own transportation when we meet them. And we will text someone when we are going on a date, and we will text them when we get home. You can develop a plan for all the things you're afraid of instead of like shutting that voice out and going, no, it'll be fine. Well, like sometimes that voice might have some valuable information to share with us, and we can listen to it and then develop a plan for any reasonable objections or concerns that might become a concern, right? But sometimes that voice is just mean and just wants to keep us at home with all the doors locked, with the dog and Netflix and a bag of chips and all the things. And then we kind of have to say to the voice, okay, thanks for sharing. And we're not doing that.
Yeah, sometimes that voice is fear, our dread of putting ourselves out there. And I think you're right about the safety thing or trying to protect yourself. But I think there's also that just if you do this, it's scary and it's a change. And many of us struggle with change.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And things get better with practice. Everything gets better with practice. I have taken so many women, including myself, through this process, and they think, no, I don't want to go on Match or Tinder, and it's just so scary and terrible and awful. And after a few weeks, they're like going on dates every week, and it's not so bad. And I'm like, hey, look at you going on dates. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to dating and Match and Tinder in a minute, but I want to go back to your book about taking responsibility for your life. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be responsible for your life? Well,
a lot of times, and I think I'm so glad that this podcast is about women's fitness and being fit and strong in your later half of life, because I think we have an easier time making ourselves responsible for our fitness because we know that we have to do that. It's kind of up to us if we're going to get up and go to the gym or do some push-ups or go for a run or not eat the bag of chips and buy some zucchini instead. We know that we are responsible for those things to a much greater extent than perhaps this weird love area where we think it's supposed to just happen to us. And I think that when we take responsibility for creating the lives that we want and seeing all the ways that it's possible to do so, instead of waiting for something to happen to us, then we can drastically increase the chances of getting what we want. And it's, I think, more obvious in the area of health and fitness and eating and exercise and all of those things. It's a little more obvious in that area than it is with love, but dating is a skill that can be learned. So taking responsibility is saying, hey, what can I do to help create the outcome I want? What can I do to make that result inevitable? And maybe we're not all going to go out and be 22-year-old size 2 jacked up bodybuilders or whatever the thing
No, that's not very realistic, is it?
Right. Maybe we're not going to do that. But what can we do to create the result that is possible? And even then, we can sort of bend what's like maybe if you've been, I love when people get fit later in life, because I did that too. I took up running at the age of 40 after hating running my entire life. And I thought people who ran marathons were nuts. I thought they were off their rockers. And 3 years later, I'm running a marathon, right? So at the beginning, you think, okay, well, maybe I'll just run a 5K. That seems doable. I don't know. And then the more you get into it, the more you realize you kind of stretch what's possible. So maybe we're not going to be the 22-year-old ever again. We were all 22 once, and I don't really think it was all that. When I really think about what it was like to be 22, I don't want to go back there anyway, but I digress.
No, that's not the age I would go back to, but
but to even stretch what is possible, what we think is possible, because we don't really know what the limit of what's possible is. But if we let our desires guide us, maybe you don't want to run a marathon right now. Maybe running a 5K seems pretty darn good. And when you get there, you might see that more is possible from that place. But it starts
with hilly 5K.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 5Ks and then there's 5Ks, or trail. Baby steps. Is that what you're saying? Baby steps, or am I taking this wrong?
I like the hilly 5K. When you get to the top of the hill, you can see more. But if you don't climb the hill, if you go back to your house and turn on the TV, you don't even know. And then you think, oh, coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe if I was still 30, but not now. Well, taking responsibility for the result you want is not doing that. It's saying, I want this thing. How can I get it? What can I do?
So it's like when Chris and I first were running 5Ks, and then we signed up for a race thinking it was a 5K, and it was a 5 mile, which is, almost not quite double, but
it felt like it.
But we said, all right, do we want to do this? This is not what we were thinking. And we like, well, yeah, we could do 5K. So there's no reason we can't run 5 miles. And then from there, we went and did a relay for a marathon. So we each ran, 6 miles or something. And that was fun. And then it was like, well, if we could do this, now we can do the half marathon.
Yeah.
You're right. It kind of takes you down like breadcrumbs down the trail to more. And boy, what a difference.
So if you decide to start meeting new people, that can lead you to then, all right, now I'm meeting new people. So I want to start dating. And if I'm going to start dating, maybe I can now find a significant, someone who actually matters to me. And so you're saying basically, once you start something new, whether it's running, dating, anything else, starting a business, whatever, is that once you start, you can find more.
Right. Yeah. Things become possible that you hadn't even maybe considered before, because you've sort of opened the floodgates a little bit.
Yeah. So there is a difference between saying, I want to find the man of my dreams, and I'm tired of sitting on the couch watching Netflix, so it's time to go out and start doing things. I could see where that would be a progression.
Sure.
Even if you're getting off the couch and is just going out and finding a volunteer thing to do or meeting new people somehow. Once you start going out, you'd then be motivated to do more.
Yeah. I often encourage people to just start talking to people, even it's so much easier to just talk to someone when you're out walking your dog and you can just say hello or greet the barista at your coffee shop or whatever. And then when you are speaking with somebody that you actually think maybe there might be a possibility of dating or a relationship, they're not the first new person that you've tried to talk to in 5 years.
Yes. Well, our listeners are women over 50, and many of us were taught to be ladies. So we're not used to working out or being strong and maybe being more forward with dating and signing up for things. So how do you help your clients overcome that way of thinking?
Well, I'm of course that age too. And I'm more of a traditional bet too. And I struggled with that in my own life. And there's a difference between like marching up to someone and asking them on a date than just making yourself available for that to happen. So going and signing up for Tinder or Match.com and writing an excellent profile or smiling at someone or saying hello are very different than walking up to someone and asking him if he wants to be your boyfriend.
Got it.
Although you could do that. I mean, you absolutely could.
Yeah, you could. But yes. All right. On the Becoming Ellie website, our website, we have a free download for mantras for working out, running, lifting weights, whatever. And they're things that we use to help us do hard things to say. Do you use mantras or anything similar to that in your work, or like visualizations, anything that help your clients get through those hard things?
I have, there's an e-course that I have, and there is a visualization in that e-course. I just feel like whatever works, do that thing. Now, some people are into visualizations and that helps them. I've been known to do some visualizations, and I think that mantras are helpful if you believe them. You have to find one that you believe, because if your brain's like, nah, I don't really believe that, you can say it all day. But so try to find some thoughts that are believable and work up to them. And I think that questioning your negative thoughts can also be helpful, because if you're saying something like, I can do amazing things, I can run a marathon, but you can barely walk around the block without getting winded, then maybe you take your brain out to coffee and you say, okay, brain, what do we really believe about running this marathon? Do we really want to run the marathon? What could we start working toward? Could we walk around the block twice? I believe I can walk around the block twice without being winded. Okay, then let's do that. And follow it up with action, because you can visualize and you can say the mantras, but then when you follow it up with some action, you kind of give it legs, and it sort of completes the cycle. So then you walk around the block twice without getting winded, and you're a little closer to that marathon. Then maybe it's, oh, I can run around the block twice or even once, and go from there. But yes, I think that mantras and visualizations are helpful.
Well, I think certainly replacing negative thoughts with positive ones, so that instead of saying, I'm too old to be out here meeting people, or I'm too old to be out here running, whatever, and replacing it with, I can meet new people, or I can run around the block, is probably more helpful.
Yeah. And you can ask your brain, why not? So you and your brain has been doing a great job protecting you. We've all made it to over 50 now because we have this marvelous brain that wants to keep us safe and from, getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers and all the things. And this brain tells you all these scary things so that you won't run out in traffic. And so, kudos to our brains. And we could sit down with a cup of coffee and a journal and write down all the things that our brain tells us to keep us safe. And so maybe you have a thought like, I'm too old to get on Match.com. It's full of crazy people anyway. And you ask your brain, is that really true? Maybe I'm 54 years old. Okay. Does that really mean that you can't find a wonderful guy on Match.com? Well, you could go on Google right now and prove your brain wrong, right? You find somebody who's over 50 and found a great person that they are spending the rest of their lives with. If you find even one person who's over 50 who found a wonderful, loving relationship, then you can just show your brain, okay, this is not true. So you can kind of ask your brain, instead of, most of us let our brains just say whatever they want all day long, like just this chatterbox riding around with us all day long, saying these terrible things. And we never even stand up and challenge it, like, hey, is that really true? But a lot of it's not true. And if it's not helpful, then we can challenge our brains and say, okay, is it really true that no one over 50 has ever run a marathon? Of course not. Go on Google. You will find tons of wonderfully fit women over 50 doing all sorts of amazing things. Your podcast is full of, like, I want to do all the things because I listen to the woman who runs the ultras. And then there's somebody on there who's rock climbing. My husband rock climbs. I'm like, oh, maybe I could rock climb. I didn't even think about that before, but now I'm like, oh, she did the rock climbing.
Yeah, isn't that rock climbing was amazing.
Yeah.
She loves it. It's cool.
Yeah, so you could ask your brain, like, oh, is it really true that no one, I'm too old? Well, there's other people who are your age who are not too old. So, okay, brain, there's at least one person who did the thing, who's not too old, who found the love of their life, who ran the marathon, who climbed some mountain and came in last and everyone was cheering for them. That was great. So,
yeah, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something about the age thing and dating. I had a friend who I think she was on Match or whatever. At any rate, she said, I have to find someone before I turn 60. I'm in my late 50s now. I have to find someone before I turn 60 because when I turn 60, I won't be able to get anyone who is close to my age. I'll have to date people in their 70s. And I was like, okay, I don't really quite understand that, but okay. But I sort of understand what she's saying is that as a 60-year-old woman, the only people who would want to date a 60-year-old woman are men in their 70s. If you had a client like that, what would you say to them?
Well, I would question that. Is there anyone over who is 60 years old who found the love of their life and he was not in his 70s? Anyone at all, ever?
I mean, not that it'd be horrible to have someone in their 70s, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But,
well, right. Exactly. Because there are plenty of men who like to date older women or women their own age. There are plenty of women in their 60s and 70s and even beyond who get married or get into a happy, loving relationship with men their own age or younger. Or even, like, what if he was in his 70s? What's so bad about that? Is it that he's in his 70s, or is it that she's afraid that his health will decline, or what is the problem with that? So there are all kinds of ways you could go with that. I would find out what the most concerning thing was to her. Is it that he's in his 70s? Is it that she's going to, maybe not be able to find younger men because men don't want a younger or older women? Like, what is the problem? And we could find evidence that those things are not always true.
Okay. I just was curious about that because when you were talking about it, it made me think of her. And at the time I was like, oh, I had never thought about that. I didn't know there were like these age ranges.
Well, there are age bands, the algorithms on the dating sites and apps and the searches and things like that. So there is some validity to whose searches you show up in.
Okay. Yes.
But you can still overcome those things. I encourage my clients to have really well-written profiles, good pictures, to be out there and available. But the most important thing is your mindset. Honestly, that's huge. And if there's even one person who found a wonderful person in their 60s, then you can too.
What role does health play in your coaching? I mean, do you recommend any eating components to your clients or exercise, physical activity? Is that part of your coaching?
I don't do that per se. I'm not a health and fitness coach. I'm a life coach, and everything I do, I can coach on anything with the mindset. I'm certified and I can help with mindset around anything.
Gotcha.
But my level of expertise, like practical application, is definitely in dating. But I always feel that when you are taking the best care of yourself possible and showing up at the highest level for yourself, so becoming the best version of yourself would include those things.
Yes.
Because when you are loving yourself, part of loving yourself, I think, is taking amazing care of yourself, feeding yourself well, exercising, getting proper rest, and treating yourself the way you would treat someone you love.
Well said. Yes.
Let's talk about actual dating for a little bit here. So many years ago, I tried online dating, and I have to say it was very eye-opening. There were a lot of men who clearly were newly divorced or perhaps widowed, but typically divorced, who had spent their past 15, 20 years sitting in a recliner. And they were very anxious to find a new woman to let them get back into their recliner. Weeding them out was sometimes a challenge. But so how do you help women actually, improve their odds of finding someone who is going to be active and, compatible with what you want to be doing? I guess if I wanted to find someone that would let me just cook and let them sit in their chair, that'd be one thing. But if you actually want to be out doing things, how do you help women improve their odds of finding a suitable partner?
Yeah. What I help my clients do with respect to actually finding the person is they need to have 5 character-based must-haves.
Oh, okay.
So these things are character-based. Now, when it's important, it's way more important to think about the kind of relationship you want to be in than the actual individual, which is why I'm not going to help you date Bob down the street because you think he's the perfect guy and you're just not ever your heart's set on him. And that's the thing. We'll have a conversation about that. But when you think about the kind of relationship you want to be in, let's just say it's a long-term, committed, loving relationship. You can make the big list. Like I let my clients go all at it. Come up with 100 things. You want them to be fit. You want them to be 6 feet tall. You want them to know how to dress. You want them to have a college degree, whatever. Then think about the top 20 things in that list and then narrow them down to 5 character-based things. So these will be things like he's loyal, he's responsible, he's kind, things like that. And then when you've got those 5 things, then those are your non-negotiables. You do not date anyone who is not, for instance, kind, who is not loyal, those kinds of things. And you can have those qualities should have something to do with actually being able to have the kind of relationship you want. Because way too many women go out there and they want the guy who's attractive, that they have these butterflies for, that they date based on attraction and chemistry. And this man has nothing to do with, he doesn't want to get married. He doesn't even want to be monogamous. He's out dating other women and doing whatever. And he doesn't want to be with you, but then you're in love with him. And then all of that. We don't do any of that. We find the man who actually wants the kind of relationship you want and has these character-based must-have qualities. And you can change any of them at any time. They're not set in stone, but there has to be a decision that you're only going to date people who have these qualities, who want the same kind of relationship that you do. So we don't end up off in the weeds taking months to get over the guy who broke your heart because he wanted to date 5 women and you were wanting to get married, things like that.
Right.
So those are important. And the second thing I'll say about that is there's a want match going on. If a lot of times people are really flexible if you give them half a chance. Like my husband at one time, who was single for 6 years before we ended up together, at one point he only dated, he put in his profile that he only wanted to date women who skied. Now, I tried skiing when I was in my 30s and it was horrible. And I could barely walk the next day. And I was never going to ski again if I had anything to say about it. And fast forward to marrying my husband and deciding to try skiing again and now loving it. But if he had left that in his profile, he wouldn't have found me. So maybe the guy in his recliner is open to going for a walk once in a while, or even risking his neck skiing because he loves you so much. You don't know if you use that for the filter. You just don't know, because especially when you've got these newly divorced guys who have been allowed to sit in that recliner and have been kind of unmotivated. A lot of people, when they go through a life change, like a divorce or being widowed or a big thing like that, you'll find them at the gym. You'll find them upgrading their appearance and doing different things with their lives. And it doesn't always happen all at once. A lot of times they're like, oh, I'm on Match and no one wants to date me. Maybe I should get to the gym. And it takes them 6 months to figure that out or whatever. So you don't know what you're seeing on Match or whatever dating platform you're on. Well, all you're seeing is a snapshot of what is happening like right then. They might get out of that recliner when they realize that, hey, you're amazing and they want to be able to keep up with you. Or maybe you work out with your friends and he's in the recliner and maybe he warms up to it over time, but he's a great guy and he loves you to bits. I don't know. And I don't tell people what to do, but I do encourage them to be a little more open-minded about things like that and consider the relationship they want to have.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, that sure does. If there was one piece of advice that you would give us, what would be the most important thing we can do to improve ourselves? And what would that be?
Wow. The most important thing you can do to improve yourselves. I would say the most important thing that anyone could do is to really, really love herself, have her own back. If there's something that you want to do in this world, if there's something that you want to be or do or have, love yourself enough to go for it.
That's great. Yeah, thanks.
And I think we've talked about your coaching services, but is there anything about what you do, how you help women that you would like to tell our listeners?
Yeah, if you want to find the love of your life, I want you to know it absolutely is possible. No matter what your age or what experiences you have had, if you really want to find the love of your life, it is 100% possible. And if you will go for it, dating is a skill that can be learned. It is not a function of if it is meant to be or luck or the fates or God or the universe delivering the exact right person to your doorstep. You don't have to wait for those things. I tried waiting for those things and I waited a really long time. And when I actually took action and learned how to date, I was able to meet a wonderful person and get married. I help women do this all the time. So if this is something you want or whatever you want in this world, love yourself enough to go for it. Dating is a skill that can be learned. You don't have to wait for it to just happen. It's just as romantic, I promise. On my wedding day, when I was walking down the aisle in my beautiful dress that I had owned for 15 years, I was not thinking that it was a huge bummer that I met him on Tinder at all.
I understand you have a gift for our listeners. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us about that? Yeah.
Yes, I have a free video about how to get into the kind of relationship you really want. And that is on my website. And I'm not sure when this podcast is airing, but I am hosting a free training on how to write an amazing profile on August 8th.
Oh, that's perfect, because I think the podcast launches the end of July.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, then I will provide the link so that women can sign up for this profile training, because it's just huge to have a really well-written profile to go out there. Most people have no idea how to write a profile. They just try to think up, something that's, whatever crosses their mind. Most people are not used to writing bios or sharing information about themselves.
Sure.
They just throw up whatever it sounds like everyone else's, whatever selfies they have on their iPhone. And then they're disappointed when their results don't match what they were hoping for. And that is completely unnecessary. I can help you write an amazing profile, and I'm going to have a free training to teach you how to do that. So we'll definitely provide a link for that.
Oh, great. That will be good. I guess that's the next question is, if our listeners want to find you online, where do they go?
They can go to ReneeSuzanneCoaching.com. There's a free video on my website to download. I have tons of blogs and information in my website that they can binge on if they want to learn all about dating.
Great.
We'll be sure to include a link in our show notes so that people can find it. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Renee. It's been really interesting.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. It's been great talking with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye. Renee Suzanne had some great ideas on how to achieve goals. I think the process was basically identify what you want, own it, and then focus your actions based on that.
Yes, I think that's exactly what she said. You know, the whole idea of articulating a desired goal, just that alone can be a little daunting at times. And a lot of the things that she talked about was kind of getting the courage to identify what you want and really feel it so you can do it.
Yes, so that once you truly identify what it is you want, then you know how to adjust your actions. So, like if you say, I really want to, achieve something, then when you start to make decisions on how to spend your time, you know where you want to go.
Right. Well, I found myself thinking after talking with her about why I want to stay fit and strong and how I want to stay fit and strong. And it's, the whole why behind it and, really focusing on, and I don't know if it's a goal exactly, because to me, a goal is achievable and done and over. But, for a long-term thing, it really gave me some food for thought. And there was overlay between some of the suggestions she had for dating and also just how you want to run your life and take responsibility for it.
Yeah. I don't think you had to be dating to benefit from what she had to say.
Right. Like she was talking about that little voice in your head that, the voice of doubt. It really just wants to keep us safe without getting hurt or risking too much. And I've heard that little voice like before a race that I've signed up for, or before maybe a more challenging, let's say, group exercise class. And I'm thinking, I'm looking around at everybody else and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're way more fit than can I do this? Why did I sign? Like the little voice starts working on me. And it's really just trying to keep us safe, to help us.
Yes.
It's an interesting way to think of it. Yeah.
I think that little voice sometimes is the same thing as, when people talk about imposter syndrome, where when you actually are fully capable of something, but you're in your head, you're not. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So like people who say, I'm not actually a runner. And then you say, but you just ran.
Yes.
You've run like 5Ks. Yeah, but I'm not really a runner.
Right. Because I run so slow.
Yeah.
Sort of qualifying things into to discount it so that we're not hurt. I guess that's the,
Or, like when we first started podcasting, I know I would have never said to someone, oh, I'm a podcaster. Right. I would have said, well, Chris and I are doing this podcast but
yeah, we're trying it. Yeah. Here we are on episode 111. I can't believe it's been that.
Yes. But so now I would just say, yes, I do. I'm a podcaster, but we do have that voice in our heads that says you're not quite good enough. You're not, you're not up to snuff.
Well, it really is true. It becomes better with practice. And, the more we do something, the more you can look out and see the next step, because I always was very intimidated with a microphone in front of me when I was recorded. I never really had a problem with public speaking, with people looking at me, but this whole have a microphone and know it's being recorded would always intimidate me. And now that, we've been doing this for a while, it's a little bit easier. That's for sure.
If you know that your long-term goal is to remain fit and healthy as long as possible, you have like smaller goals along the way. Like, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week or whatever.
Right. Baby steps helps you get to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I just think that when you can articulate what you want, it makes it a lot easier to know if what you're doing is moving you towards your goal or towards what you want or away from it.
Exactly.
If you're going to be dating and you say, I want to date and I want to meet someone that I can actually have a long-term meaningful relationship with, then you do have to do things to accomplish that. And that would include like not dating a married person or, there's lots of things in between not doing anything and sort of self-sabotaging, I guess.
Well, I thought it was interesting how she talked about getting to the characteristics based on the must-haves, not specifics like a certain person, but what type of person. And I think of that along the lines of being and getting fit, not saying, well, I'm going to have something so specific that's unattainable, but more in general. When I'm thinking of being fit, I'm not going to win a race that I signed up for necessarily, but I may be able to run the mileage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, I liked how she talked about, having your own back and really loving yourself. And so there's a lot of things that overlap with accepting yourself and loving yourself.
Yes, I agree.
And I'd love to hear from our listeners about any goals that they're working on trying to achieve, what they thought of today's podcast. I know we have some Becoming Ellie members who are working on their first triathlons, first marathons, and some folks that are just starting out on their fitness journey. So we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at our website, becomingellie.com, or on any of our social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Also, be sure to join our private Facebook group where we encourage and support each other. Oh, Chris, I've been meaning to tell you that somebody asked me recently about when we publish these episodes.
Yeah, it might seem random, but we put out 2 episodes a month, and we aim for the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of each month.
Yeah, so there is reason to it. I mean, there is a pattern, but I know someone was sort of puzzled by it.
Yeah. Well, it's an unusual pattern. Yeah. But twice a month.
And listeners, if you enjoy the podcast, please tell a friend. It helps to get some word of mouth.
Yes, it was great talking with you today, Jill. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.